obviously I don't. Okay, cool. Okay, good morning everybody and welcome to this webinar. Thank you for waiting. We just wanted to give people a few minutes to make sure they could join us. So good morning and welcome to this webinar delivered by myself, Jerry, and Laura. We are both Graduate Development Officers with the Cardiff Capital Region. We will briefly introduce ourselves and then go into the presentation and explain the format of this webinar. So, my name's Jerry and I have been involved since the start of this graduate programme, and I'm really delighted with the progress we've made and the development and changes we have made since we started in March 2019. We have gone from a 1-year pilot to a 4-year project plan with a target of getting 500 graduates into jobs by 2024. We currently have 30 graduates working with local businesses and are currently working on our 3rd cohort of graduates. I'm really passionate about finding roles for graduates that are sustainable and use the best skills that graduates can offer, plus the opportunity to develop as themselves and with the businesses they are working with. I'll just briefly hand you over to Laura for her introduction.
Thanks, Jerry. My name's Laura. I've been involved in the graduate scheme since it launched in April 2019. I've previously worked within the careers service at Cardiff University, so I've long been really passionate about helping employers realise the potential of graduate talent and also helping graduates navigate the job market and figuring out what's next. I'm now just going to pass you over to Jerry, who's going to provide you with an overview of the session.
Okay, thanks Laura. So just a quick explanation about the question and answer session. As we explained in the invite, we will be monitoring the questions as we go, and we will pick out some key topics and themes and feedback at the end of the presentation, but we have set aside a time at the end for a specific Q&A session, so we will try to answer as many questions as we can. Okay, so in terms of an overview of the webinar, what we're going to try and cover over the next sort of 30-40 minutes is an overview of the Cardiff Capital Region. What is it and what does it mean to you? The overview of the Cardiff Capital Region Graduate Scheme, so how we can help you out. Why should you work and live here in this particular area? A look at what businesses we work with. A look at some of the graduate testimonials and how they felt about the scheme. How does the application process work? So we'll walk you through that. We're going to look at some of the top skills that the employers are looking for and how you can match your applications to those skills that they are requiring. We're going to have a look at some of the example roles and opportunities that are available now. Look at what your universities and career services can help you with and how they can assist you in your applications. We're also going to have a look at how we've adapted in terms of the COVID-19 pandemic, what changes we've made to the scheme. Also looking at how businesses in the Cardiff Capital Region have responded to COVID-19. We're going to show you around the graduate scheme website so you know where to apply, And then, as I say, we've got a specific Q&A session dedicated at the end. Thank you, Laura. So, what is the Cardiff Capital Region? So the Cardiff Capital Region City Deal is a programme agreed in 2016 between the UK government, the Welsh government and the 10 local authorities in South East Wales to bring about significant economic growth in the region through investment, upskilling and improved physical and digital connectivity. So what does that mean for a graduate? So to explain in more detail, it basically means that the 10 local authorities in South East Wales have committed over a 20-year period to develop this area in terms of job opportunities, digital availability and improved transport links, making this an area that people want to work and live in. Apart from government funding, there is equal contributions from each of those local authorities shown on that slide, each determined to make South East Wales an attractive place for businesses, employment and opportunities. So looking at some of the highlights in terms of transport and digital improvements to date and how this can make this an appealing place to live and work and what's currently happening. A new metro system has been developed between the 10 local authorities with a £73 million invested in improving the transport system around the area so people can commute to work more effectively and easily, and encouraging people to move and invest in properties in areas that are considered as rural areas, making buying homes more affordable for everybody. Some of the highlights in terms of digital improvements. So asking questions like, will home working become the norm? Working to provide the underlying technology in order to make the radical step change in behaviour a much easier proposition. We're enabling 186 public sector sites across the region to have gigabyte capable connectivity, which allows all the rollout of fibre to all surrounding areas. Due to the impending changes that have been forced on us due to COVID-19, we have made more progress in the last 3 months on digital transformation than we have done in 10 years. The technology is there, but it was the cultural change that we needed to embed. And now that has happened with businesses, we must continue to move this forward with innovative ways to engage and combat social isolation through digital solutions. We have a digital strategy for the whole region, the whole 10 local authorities, which is a much stronger policy than having 10 separate versions from each local authority. And because of this joined up way of thinking and working, this is attracting serious interest from large multinational organisations such as BT, EE and O2. This will ensure that we have a holistic approach across the region instead of different services and connectivity in neighbouring areas. We already have 5G in Cardiff and we are part of 3 5G trials in Blaenau Gwent and Monmouthshire, testing services over the 5G network, and this will allow cutting-edge technology to be available for businesses to think about radically changing their business processes and what they are offering. Also, by working directly with the Swansea Bay City Deal and Mid and North Wales growth deals on digital, we are ensuring that Wales is at the forefront of digital connectivity for the UK. These are just examples. These are just some of the examples being delivered by a £1.2 billion project in this area. And this is why we are working with businesses in this area and graduates to promote more employment opportunities for graduates and roles that lead to better career development and employment sustainability. Thank you, Laura. So to go into more detail about the actual Cardiff Capital Region Graduate Scheme. So it's a paid graduate level internship. You'll be part of induction and being part of a cohort group. We want you to stay and work in South East Wales. Opportunities for all degree subjects and backgrounds, and you'll also be taking part in a fully funded ILM qualification. So again, to give you a bit more depth to that detail, the offer is basically a 6-month internship initially that we want the employers then to offer at the end of it a permanent employment opportunity. Currently, 87% of our employers have kept their graduates on after the 6-month period. The internship is about the employer getting to know you and you making sure you are in the right role as a graduate to suit your skills and ambitions. So it's very much a two-way partnership and commitment between the employer and the employee. During the 6 months, you will also be signed up to do the ILM qualification, which is the Institute of Leadership and Management qualification. And this is all about you as a graduate. This is all about personal development and additional skills that you need as an employee, adding to the skills already learned during time at university and those that an employer is looking for. The other option we have is if an employer wants to do an alternative qualification that adds more specific skills to a role, we will pay towards that qualification for you with a contribution from your employer. And again, this is highlighting the joint commitment between the graduate and the employer. Salaries are generally ranging between 18 to 25,000, with more specific roles being advertised up to around 30,000. The thing to remember at this stage is the starting salary isn't the fixed salary. Each employer is basically saying to us, send me the right person and we will do the rest in terms of development and training opportunities. And within that are salary increases, which will come with development within the company and the progress you are making towards that company. So as a graduate, it's about looking at the opportunity that comes with this role, not necessarily the starting salary. What we also want you to think about as well is the different degrees and backgrounds and how they can match different roles. Don't be ring-fenced by the degree you have. Laura will go into more detail a bit later on how your degree can match specific roles. You will also be working in cohorts of between 8 to 12 graduates, so you will have a group of people as support, both during your employment and going through whatever qualification you are working on. Thank you, Laura. So the next thing we're looking at is why should you work and live here? What's appealing about this particular region? So it's an affordable cost of living, exciting sporting and cultural events, stunning natural landscapes and coastlines around certainly South East Wales area and South West Wales, and excellent transport links. As mentioned earlier, the Cardiff Capital Region investment in this whole area is a 1.2 financial commitment. And that's a big project funding. 73 million is being spent on improving transport links. Cardiff hosts top sporting events, top shows and affordable cost of living in and around the 10 local authorities, with housing developments planned on areas that have been vacant for over 20 years. There are currently huge amounts of investment in places like Newport and Barry and regeneration projects in Blaenau Gwent and Ebervale. So those are just some of the reasons why you should consider living and working in this area. Thank you, Laura. So this slide shows the range of companies we are working with, and you'll recognise some of those names and you won't have recognised the others. Some are big national companies with recognised names, for example, Lovell and eTeach. However, we wanted to also highlight the fact that we're working with micro companies who are organisations employing less than 10 people, and SME companies who are organisations that employ up to about 250 people. All of these companies, no matter how big or small they are, really value the skills and the new ideas that a graduate can bring to develop their business plans, no matter how big or small they are. And just to give you an idea in terms of some of the variety of roles we have appointed, Spire Renewables, which is a micro organisation, have employed a renewable energy graduate. Quantum Advisory, who are classed as a SME organisation, have employed a trainee accountant. And just some other examples to pull out from there. Front Door Communications have employed a communications executive, and Clifton Finance have employed a trainee finance broker. Several of these companies have been so impressed with the calibre of graduates that we are attracting that they have come back to us with additional roles, and this will help our graduate scheme reputation grow in line with our 4-year business plan. and more businesses will come to us with more roles, and that will increase more opportunities for the graduates, which is exactly what we all want to happen. Thank you, Laura. So just looking at some of the graduate testimonials here, and we just picked out 2 for you here. These are just 2 of the examples of the 2 graduates that have found employment through our scheme. Have a look on our website at the others, but basically what they are saying is how straightforward the process is in terms of application to interview. We acknowledge receipt of your applications and we let you know whether you have been successful or not in your application. So we will always update you on progress. These quotes came as a direct result of us asking the graduates why they applied via our scheme. And Stephanie, working with Nightingale HQ, said, "This was a chance for a job where I wasn't expected to know everything, and fresh ideas are more welcome than years of experience. Combined with the opportunity to develop management skills, it seems like a great opportunity which really supports you in developing from a graduate to a working professional. So if you're considering it, there's no reason not to take advantage of the scheme and the supports it offers." And I think that highlights everything in terms of the positive feedback from the graduates that we are getting. Okay, I'm now going to hand you over to Laura, who will complete the rest of the presentation.
Thanks, Mary. So I'm just going to look at the application work. So firstly, applicants will need to apply on our website. And I'll go through the application process in a bit more detail later when I go through the website. We advertise on our website and also on our university web pages and on our LinkedIn. Roles and vacancies do change on a regular basis. So if there is a role that you're not keen on, there will be other opportunities coming up. The application process is fairly straightforward, and we'll go into that a bit later. The next stage of the process is the fact that me and Jerry undertake the shortlisting, which we're currently carrying out remotely. If you're successfully shortlisted, we'll invite you to the next stage of the process. When we have very large numbers of candidates, we'll ask the candidates to prepare a video presentation, which we'll give a bit more background on later. And for roles that perhaps have smaller numbers of shortlisted applicants, candidates will then be fast-tracked straight to the interview stage, which will take place with the employer. We do aim to provide all shortlisted candidates with feedback and with signposts to other roles that may be appropriate or similar. And so now I just wanted to cover some of the top skills that employers are looking for and the reason why we're focusing on these skills in particular. So there was a study carried out by the Federation of Small Businesses in Wales on the types of skills that they look for in their employees when hiring into their organisation. And no matter how vast the organisation were or what skills that it was that they specifically needed, these were the core transferable skills that continually came up, and this is reflected in our assessment process. So for example, if we are asking you to prepare a presentation as part of the application process, we want to see that you've self-managed and organised your time and that you've got strong verbal communication skills. You may even be asked as part of the presentation topic to actually prepare a problem to show how you've answered a problem or responded to a challenge. Of course, depending on the role, there might be technical skills that might be needed. So for example, if you're applying to be a graphic designer, then it might be required that you would need Adobe or InDesign. Also, in response to COVID-19, businesses are expected to meet all kinds of challenges and need the graduate talent that can immediately help to meet that. So the idea that perhaps you might have to be flexible in the type of role you're going into and some of the duties that you might be carrying out, and also being quite adaptable and resilient in what we're finding in quite a changing environment. This slide looks a bit about where your degree can take you, and Jerry briefly mentioned this earlier, the idea that you don't want to be ring-fenced by your degree and what it is that you're studying. And what this graphic actually shows you, these are all examples of graduates that have been on our scheme and the types of roles that they've gone into. Your degree actually does not limit your options and what roles you should consider. And we've got a wide range of opportunities that have been available and accepted applicants from a wide range of backgrounds. So in this climate, you may want to think more widely about the opportunities on offer, and I would say for perhaps over half of the opportunities that we've advertised in the past, it didn't actually matter what your original degree was. And I just want to go into a bit more detail about some of the examples listed on the screen. So Jerry talked about Stephanie and Fergus, who were two of the first graduates on our scheme. So Stephanie did a conservation biology degree and actually went on to be a digital marketer. Fergus originally did a history degree and now has gone on to be a graduate trainee finance broker. And he's actually thrived so well in the role that he's actually going to be involved in the next the training of the next graduate that the company take on, which I think is absolutely fantastic. So this goes to show that you're not at all limited by the degree that you do and the vast range of jobs out there that might actually be suitable for you. And in terms of actually looking at what those roles are, so job hunting in itself is a bit of a skill and it can be quite hard to navigate, especially if you're not actually sure what you want to do. So in this climate, you might want to actually look at sectors that you may not have considered before. So for example, if you're interested perhaps in marketing or communications as a role, you might want to kind of look more broadly. It might be that they have those opportunities available in manufacturing or compound semiconductors or the pharmaceutical industry that might not initially be on your radar. And if you're not sure what you want to do altogether, it can be even harder. And sometimes it's about actually looking specifically at a job title and looking at that job description and thinking, do you match those skills, and not being intimidated by what it's asking of you. So for example, if it was a role for a graduate account manager or a business development executive, those roles are about having good communication skills and being able to talk to clients. And the employers won't expect you to have the background knowledge and expertise. They will give that to you there and then. The chances are that you might be applying for a role with an SME through the graduate scheme, and that would offer you considerable responsibility and flexibility, perhaps compared to some of the larger employers or some of the larger graduate schemes. But what we really want to stress here is that many employers want the right person with the right attitude. We've continually been told, send us the right person and we'll do the rest. Employers want to invest in your training and development as long as you demonstrate having those core transferable skills. They know you're not going to be polished, and they know that you're not going to be perfect, which is why that 6-month internship is in place. The employers want to see what you're made of, and then hopefully there'd be the prospect of long-term employment afterwards. Another top tip I wanted to draw attention to with the application form is that applicants, as part of the process, would be expected to address the essential and desired criteria in the job description and use specific examples. And we really want to stress this. And when I go onto the website later, hopefully you'll get a better understanding of what I mean. But we really want you to go into detail and show that you've really researched the role, and even better, show that you've actually researched the employer. So it will only take 5 minutes just to go on the website and just to find out a bit more about that employer and perhaps what it is that employer does or what kind of sector that they work in. When applicants submit exactly the same information for every single job, they stand out a mile away. We are not looking for cut and paste. And in terms of getting the advice and actually finding out how to best fill out the application process and to excel during the application process, we're very lucky that we've got a very close relationship with the universities on the scheme, and we want to ensure that graduates are as well equipped as possible during the application process. Even after graduation, your university career service can still provide one-to-one advice and guidance, and we wanted to just kind of highlight some of the resources here from some of our local universities that we work with in the region. So Cardiff University, Cardiff Metropolitan, the Open University in Wales, and the University of South Wales. And these are some of the links, and what some of you might not have even realised, that even though you've graduated or are about to graduate, you can still access your career service for a number of years after graduation. So by no means are your university saying goodbye to you. They still want to be there, and you can still access the help and support that you need. If you did attend another university, they will also have similar services in place to support graduates, and more information on those can be found on your university or student support website. So this part of the presentation, I wanted to look a bit more closely at how it is that we've responded to COVID-19. Obviously, this has had such a massive impact on so many businesses and organisations throughout the country, and obviously globally as well. But the main headline that we want to get across is that we are still open for business. We're still open for business, and since this has taken place, we have since lockdown has happened, we have placed 3 graduates in different roles since lockdown has happened, and these have been in a variety of roles. So we've placed a graduate as a project manager, a property surveyor, marketing, and also graphic design as well. We've also adapted our recruitment process as well. So normally we would hold assessment centres with one of the local universities and have up to 6 graduates together for a presentation and group activity. But in response to COVID-19, we are now asking graduates to prepare a video presentation to be delivered on Microsoft Teams. Instead of having face-to-face interviews with employers, graduates have phone and video interviews with employers instead. Despite the different format on assessment, we still really want graduates to prepare, dress smartly and take the process just as seriously as if it was taking place face-to-face. We've also adapted the delivery of the ILM qualification, which Jerry briefly mentioned earlier. So the graduates are still able to participate and engage just as they would do before. So rather than attending an all-day session at the University of South Wales, where the qualification is held, delivery is broken down into smaller 2-hour chunks that's much more manageable online. I mean, I'm sure that we're all feeling that we're having a lot of screen time at the moment, and it can be hard to kind of retain our attention and retain engagement. So we've adapted that process, so it's a lot easier for the graduates to manage that alongside their workload. The graduates are still interacting with each other and engaging with each other, and are still encouraged to reflect on their own experiences. And some of the topics that are included include project management, financial management, and being resilient in the workplace. In terms of how businesses have responded to COVID-19, also obviously, as I mentioned earlier, every business and sector has been affected in some way, whether that's working from home, diversifying what they do, or pausing their operations entirely for the time being. And this has obviously had a bit of a knockback on recruitment. Some businesses have decided to pause their graduate recruitment or are taking the time out to consider their options. But there are still businesses out there that need graduates. And even though many businesses are focused on survival and maintaining over the next year, skills have been identified as being really vital to manage the economic recovery in the long term, with a real focus on sustainable and meaningful roles. So in terms of what the number of vacancies say, so we did a bit of work with an organisation called GradCore recently, and they examined the number of vacancies in Wales between March and May. And as you can expect, the number of vacancies declined substantially across the UK and in Wales. But what has been noticed across the UK is that there was a slight increase of vacancies in June. And it's a bit too early to say exactly how this pattern is going to look in the months to follow, but we have noted that some businesses are now looking past the initial shock factor and looking at what roles and skills they might need in the coming months. Without a magic crystal ball, it's really hard to say exactly where the demand is going to come from and where exactly these jobs are going to lie. But we do anticipate that some demand will come from the life science and medical devices sector, technology, compound semiconductors, cybersecurity, financial and professional services, engineering, transport and construction. Whilst a lot of these sectors will have quite STEM-based roles requiring particular and technical skill sets, many organisations will still need operational roles such as marketing, HR and finance in order to look at what they need next. Of course, we're still having conversations across a range of sectors and a range of businesses, and as I really want to stress, nothing is 100% certain at the moment, but this is just where we anticipate some of that demand is coming from. And in terms of what we're doing right now, what I'm actually going to show you is the roles that we currently have live on the website and what it is that you might apply to. So if you just bear with me one moment while I just pull our website up. So you should be able to see our website here. So this is our graduate jobs page, and this lists the 3 roles that we have live at the moment. So if you were to go on our website, so for example, I'm going on the graduate electrical engineer role, you can see information about the role listed here, some information about the company, and again, we expect you to perhaps maybe read into that yourself and do a bit of your own research. Information about the duties and responsibilities that might be expected, and again, this essential and desired criteria, which we really want you to pay attention to and show that you have experience of or that you have an understanding of. And in order to apply for a role, you just click on the Apply Now button, and the drop-down screen will appear. And this will ask you to fill in personal information, what role you're applying for, your education, what university that you attended, and again, the supporting information that we mentioned earlier. So this is actually the most important bit of the application process. This shows that you've actually given an example of what it is that the job is looking for, and perhaps you're reflecting on your own bits of work experience you carried out, any projects that you've worked on during university, any extracurricular activities that you've carried out that show that you have the knowledge that are applicable to each of these areas. What we would actually suggest is perhaps when you're filling out the application process, which can be quite a timely process, is actually to do it on a Microsoft Word document initially and then copy and paste it onto the application form, because the worst thing that can happen is that you spend lots of time doing it and then for some reason the page doesn't save or the browser crashes. And also our application process doesn't actually offer a spell check, so you might want to check that on the Microsoft Word beforehand and make sure that all of your spelling and grammar is correct before putting it into the official application form. We've also put a little bit of application advice on the website, and again what we would really stress is that your university that is there to kind of provide you with more advice and guidance on how to really excel yourself in application forms, but there is a bit more information there and we would encourage you to take a look at that as well. So what I'm now going to do is go back onto the presentation and go back to Jerry, who will take the lead for the Q&A session.
Okay, thanks Laura. So I've just been monitoring some of the questions that have come in, some really good questions. And just to go through some of them that have raised, and please don't add some more now because Laura will keep an eye on them as I'm answering some of those. So the first question is, what level of degree is accepted? And basically any degree is accepted. If you're a graduate, and also time-wise as well, it can be a master's, it can be a PhD, any level of degree. Depending on the nature of the role, sometimes the employers ask that the degrees are have been achieved within the last 2 years, and that's purely because of the content of the degree and what they're looking for in terms of matching specific roles. I guess that's very much around sort of software roles and things like that. But if you have a degree and you're a graduate, you're eligible to apply for any of the roles on our website. Second question was based around how long do we feed back to you once you've applied. So myself and Laura do the shortlisting for the roles. We tend to shortlist within 2 weeks of the deadline of the application. So we aim to get back to you within 2 weeks, and invariably it is shorter than that. We either feed back to you that you've been unsuccessful at this time, or we feed back to you the next steps in terms of the interviewing process and what the employer is looking for. And on occasions, we have fed back that, okay, you're unsuccessful for this particular role, but actually looking at your application form, you really match another live role at the moment. But we definitely come back to you. Where there have been delays in the past is because we've submitted some applications to the employer and we're then dependent on the employer coming back to us. But we aim to get back to you within a 2 week period, and we will always get back to you at some point in terms of how successful your application has been. Another question was around what level of support do we offer the graduates whilst they're on the 6-month internship? And basically our roles, which is why we enjoy our roles so much, we're graduate development officers. So as well as working with the businesses and looking for these roles and getting the roles on the website and shortlisting, part of our role is to support the graduates while they're in internship. And we do this through a number of ways. So we email the graduates on a regular basis. Is everything okay? Are you happy in your role? Are there any issues we can help you with? We try to organise ad hoc events with other organisations that are out there where there's a specific speaking event going on, and we'll invite you to attend those as well. We're here to support you if you have any issues within your employment. Not necessarily employer to employee issues, that's very much between your sort of two people to organise, but very much about, is the employer asking you to do what they employed you to do, basically. So is the role what you want? Because we're very conscious, we want graduates to be given graduate level opportunities. So that's all about individual project management, individual responsibilities, and, you know, people actually listening to you and your ideas. So going back to Stephanie's quote, it's about, doesn't matter how long the company's been going, I'm a new graduate, I have new ideas, what do you think about this way forward? There's also support available to you from the training provider in terms of the qualification. So you'll have a support cohort in terms of other graduates, and that's great in terms of meeting up as a group, and that's part of the reason to do the qualification as well. So a question raised, again, a very good question. What happens if after 6 months the employer doesn't keep you on? So this is the idea with the internship, and as I touched on it earlier on, it's very much about making sure the employer has found the right employee, but also you as a graduate are actually in a role that you want to be in a role. You're not committed to a long-term contract. So the 6-month internship is about both sets of people being happy with what's happening in that 6-month internship. However, during that internship as well, you're basically getting the work experience that people want you to have when you're applying for jobs. And it is that round the houses. I can't get a job because I haven't got work experience. I need a job to find the work experience. So your CV is a much better CV than it was when you started that 6-month role. You've also got the addition of the ILM qualification. So you've developed personally, you've got the additional skills now that you can add to your own university degree, and all the skills you have leading up to this point. You've now got those additional skills that the employers are asking for, and we can refer back to the top tips employer slide to match that up. We will also, if an employer says they're not keeping you on for whatever reason, we will look at, and we've done this in the past, at what are the live roles are out there. And you are now a much stronger candidate to apply for those roles because you've got 6-month work experience, you've got the ILM qualification, you're in a much better position to apply for another job. And if one of those jobs are on our roles, are on our website, we will try and match you to that one as well. But the thing to remember at this point as well, like we said earlier on, 87% of our employers have kept the graduates on. But it's not always the employer's decision that's within that balance of 13%. Sometimes the graduates say, this isn't actually the role I signed up for. This isn't the role actually I want to do. I want to do something more expansive or something a bit more open. So it's not the end of the 6 months internship isn't always the employer's decision. Sometimes it's the actual graduates who say, thanks, but no thanks. This organisation or this role isn't actually for me. So that's one thing for you to remember as well. Okay, and then one of the last questions that I monitored coming in, so a question around the ILM qualification, and it's a question we get asked all the time. Is it assignments or is it exams? And there are no exams in it at all. It's all assignment based, and I believe the maximum word count on the assignments is something like 1,500. So in comparison to what you've already submitted in terms of your degree and your dissertation, the assignments are minimal. Having said that, the qualification is very much about personal development, group work, change resilience. As Laura said, it's very much about developing you as a person rather than proving that you can write an assignment. So, and that's the enjoyment of the actual qualification. You do it with other graduates, and it's very much about working together as a group rather than assignments, but there are definitely no exams in this. Okay, Laura, have you picked up any other questions there?
Yeah, I'm just gonna pick up a few questions that I've seen here. So for example, a couple students have asked about can international students, are they eligible for the graduate scheme? So as part of the criteria for the graduate scheme, you would be expected to have at least an undergraduate degree, and you need to have the right to work in the UK. So what this does mean is that unfortunately we're not able to assist students or graduates that perhaps would require sponsorship as part of the job if they wanted to stay in the UK after graduating. So if you are an international student, you would need to have the right to work in the UK after graduation. And unfortunately, that's just based on UK government guidance as well. A couple people have asked about roles becoming available on the website. So as we've stated, there are currently 3 roles available on the website, and roles are coming up on a regular basis. So we can't say exactly when a certain role is going to come up and what a certain role might be in. But what we really strongly suggest is to keep checking the website on a regular basis. We try and send out regular email updates when roles become available. What I would recommend everyone doing, if they don't already, is to actually go on LinkedIn and follow the graduate scheme on LinkedIn, which will put some details up at the end, because whenever we have a new role come available, we also put a notification on there as well. One student has asked that they say that they're a mature student that have worked, but not necessarily in their degree industry. Does it matter what age you are when you apply for the scheme? And what I can confirm is that there's no age limit, and there's no limit to how long ago you might have graduated before taking part in the graduate scheme, which is great. So you might have graduated last year, you might have graduated this year, you might have graduated a few years ago. But if there's a role on the website that perhaps you'd be interested in applying for, we can ensure that you would still be more than welcome to apply as well. Another question we had also relating to the ILM qualification is, would the graduates be required to pay extra for the ILM qualification, or is it doctrine pay? And what we can confirm is that there would be no additional cost to yourselves for taking part in the ILM qualification. The ILM is completely free. We want you, this is part of your development with the employee. You would be paid your salary by the employer, and you would get the ILM qualification for free as part of this. Are there any other questions that you wanted to pick up, Jerry?
Yeah, so I picked up some. So one was asked about the Welsh language. So will not being able to speak Welsh be a disadvantage? No, absolutely not. None of our employers have put it down as an essential up to date. Obviously, the essential criteria, the important fact, but to date, we haven't had anywhere that's required a Welsh speaker. So that certainly will not be a disadvantage. Somebody has asked about if they need to relocate, can we help with those relocation costs? We can't as part of the Cardiff Capital Region Graduate Scheme, but it may be a conversation that you could have with your potential employer, but it's not something we can support with. Salary, somebody asked about the salary, and yes, the salaries are pro rata. So if they're giving you a 6-month contract and it's advertised at 20,000, that will be pro rata. You will get that salary for 6 months. Somebody has asked, is there help for online applications? And it's a good question, and we've actually got a dedicated area on our website where the universities have helped us put together some top tips for applying for these jobs. Another question was, somebody just wanted clarity that they were actually applying for a job and not an internship. So ultimately, you're applying for a job with an employer that we are working with, that they may employ you as under an internship contract. So they will employ you for 6 months as part of our internship. And being employed via this scheme basically means that you're entitled to all the additional support that we offer and the training providers offer as well. Okay, and then somebody has asked, would it be possible to share the slides once the presentation is over? Yes, that's not a problem. We're going to give you our email addresses at the end. So there's another one here, Laura. You mentioned video presentations for popular roles. Who decides on the topic, and can you give us some examples? So yeah, good question. So basically, we work with the employers. We do what the employers want to do. in that the employer will say to us, we'll say to the employer, we've had 40 applications for this, we've shortlisted down to 10, we want to shortlist down to 3 to send you for interview, for example, and the employer will then ask for a specific presentation to be completed over the course of 10 minutes, and we will give you the content in advance of that presentation. We will send you a time, and then we will expect you to log on a couple of minutes in advance of that, deliver your presentation, as Laura said, in a professional manner, deliver your presentation, and then complete it on or around sort of the 10-minute scale. So it's very much about, at the moment, we're not doing sort of face-to-face assessment centres, so the video online interviews are the second stage really, but everything, all the notifications we'll send you in advance. So it won't be just you doing a 10-minute presentation, you don't know what the presentation on. We'll give you as much advance warning as we can. Okay. Have you picked any other up, Laura?
Yeah, so I'm just having a look now. So a couple of people have asked, how often do new opportunities come up? So opportunities do come up on a regular basis. And also someone else has asked, when do we need to apply for this scheme? So what's different about this scheme compared to other graduate schemes is that there isn't one set deadline for all of the roles. The application deadline will depend on the specific role that it is you're applying for. I do think the 3 roles that we currently have live, I think their deadlines are all on the 3rd of August. But actually, for some of the roles that we might have in the future, they would all have different deadlines. So I would suggest that you look at them specifically. Someone has asked specifically about if we have any cybersecurity roles and whether they would be available. As I kind of stated during the presentation, it's where we anticipate these roles might come from. So unfortunately, we're not able to say, yes, we definitely have this role coming up on such a date, and we have these roles available now. But what we do anticipate is that we might have some of these opportunities becoming live over the next couple of weeks and months. So that's why we really recommend that perhaps you sign up to our website for email notifications, that you regularly check our website, and that you regularly check your university jobs boards and our LinkedIn page as well. Someone else has asked a really good question. So after doing one graduate scheme or perhaps one graduate internship, are you able to apply for another? So what we would recommend, if you've already applied for a graduate internship with ourselves and been successful, that would be classed as it would only be one graduate internship per person really, and the idea is that this scheme is open to anyone that hasn't already taken part on any type of graduate scheme really before. So I hope that helped to clarify that. Another question on training here. So one person's asked, do any of the employers offer subsequent training towards an ACCA qualification, which I understand is an accounting qualification? And what we have found is that employers will employ graduates through us and put them through the ILM qualification initially, but actually what they actually want to do is put them through that specific industry specific qualifications. So Fergus, who I actually mentioned earlier, he's currently going through his formal examinations and qualifications in order to become a trained finance broker. We also have another graduate working for a housing company, Alex, and he's currently being put through his qualifications so that he can become a chartered surveyor as well. Just looking at some of the other questions. Okay,
so I've got a couple to cover, Laura. So one really good question around the digital developments that are coming within the Cardiff capital region. Does that mean there will be more digital roles available? Really good question. This is part of the reason we wanted to spend some time explaining what the Cardiff capital region is. And the answer to that question is yes. Over time, once the region as a whole develops and grows, more businesses will invest in this area, more businesses will grow in this area, which means that they will then recruit more people and they will have specific skill sets that they are looking at. And who are the best people to match those specific skill sets but graduates? So yeah, really good question. This is part of the sort of the 10 local authority areas that are growing and developing, and there's an awful lot of work going on. Even though it's a long-term project, there's a lot of work going on at the moment, so keep an eye on those roles, those will come up. Somebody's asked about they're currently doing a degree, can they apply? If you're going to complete your degree in the next 2 or 3 months, for example, if you're doing a master's degree and you're going to complete in September, I would advise you to apply for any of the roles that are advertised, because you can have a conversation with the employer that I'm due to graduate. This is the grade that I'm anticipating, and you and the employer can discuss around potentially delaying the start date. And we will always have that conversation with the employer when we're putting you forward for any next steps in terms of the interviews. But ideally, you should have completed your degree. So if you're in year 2, you can't apply for the scheme because you have to have a degree under your belt or within the next few months graduating. Somebody's asked, should they tailor their CV around the application as well? And I think the more you can match the roles that are required on the application, the more chances you have of moving on to the next level of interview. Okay, and somebody else asked, is there an alert in terms of the jobs, or do you have to keep looking on the website? Personally, I would just say keep checking the website, because as Laura said earlier on, we're just about to do a big marketing campaign with specific technology companies and life sciences companies and manufacturing companies as well. And we're hoping that that's going to bring some success with companies coming back to us and more roles being made available. So we were advertising between 10 and 12 roles before COVID-19 kicked in, but then obviously a lot of employers have suspended those roles. Those roles will come live again, I suspect, in the next couple of months. So my advice would just keep checking the website, save the link, and keep checking the roles. And as soon as the role is up there, then we're tending to have a 4-week deadline at the moment. So the more you check the website, the more you'll find a role you're interested in.
Okay, brilliant. There's a couple of other questions I just wanted to address, and I think me and Jerry have kind of addressed this, but maybe it will kind of help specifically for individual applicants. So someone has asked, could they apply with a foundation degree? Someone has asked that they're currently doing an MBA, and can they apply because they're currently looking for a job as part of a sandwich placement as part of their degree. And another person has said that they've got a diploma and are looking to complete their degree starting in October. Would they be able to do an internship while studying their degree? And basically what we need to stress is that you can't currently be studying and doing being part of the graduate scheme at the same time. This is completely basically a full-time job. This would be your first full-time job basically out of university, and we would expect you to have an undergraduate degree at least as part of that. So if you're perhaps looking for a year in industry placement or a summer placement, or looking for something to do whilst you're studying, this perhaps isn't quite the right scheme available for you, but there might be other internships and work experience opportunities available via your university. So I would recommend checking with them as well to see what could be available as well. As someone else has asked, do you get a wide variety of job types? What type of jobs most commonly appear with the scheme? Which is a really good question. So we mentioned some of the jobs that we have advertised in the past year, and what we have found is that the jobs have really been really varied. We've advertised some very niche roles, so for example working specifically on renewable energy. We've advertised some broad roles. Marketing and communications has been quite popular, a need for companies, especially if they're a small company that's perhaps struggling to introduce their own social media and marketing strategy and need some help. That's also been quite popular. But again, it's been incredibly varied. We've seen a lot of quite STEM-based roles, such as engineers and project managers, yeah, it's been incredibly varied. And what I would say is probably over half the roles that we advertise, it doesn't really matter what your degree background is in. So I wouldn't say there is like a typical job that is advertised alongside the scheme. I think the beauty of the scheme is that we can be advertising quite a wide range of roles from a wide range of organisations.
Okay, so I've just looking at, so there was a question at, I hope I'm not duplicating some of these now, but looking at the business intelligence officer role right now, and there seems to be quite a lot of experience required to be considered. Is this list all essential experience needed for the role? So that particular role, the employer is looking for a particular set of skills. So on the application, there will be some essential experience required and then some desired experience required. This is quite a specific role, as you can imagine, I believe with Avron Housing. And some employers are looking for experience, and this is the conversation we were having earlier on around it's hard to have work experience unless you've actually got the right job. But this might suit somebody who's actually had a degree 2 or 3 years ago and has been working somewhere else and has got some level of experience that they can offer. Having said that, if you feel you're a strong enough candidate, there is nothing wrong with putting in an application and saying, I have this, I have that, and trying to match the skills. And then again, we will have that conversation with the employer. So some roles are more specific than others, and sometimes they suit sort of a master's degree rather than somebody who graduated with an honours degree a year ago. But they, as Laura said, they really do vary. Another really good question. I really like the idea of joining a graduate job because I feel like I'd be supported better than an entry-level job. Will this be the case if I'm the first digital member of staff in a company, for example? I'd like to be in an already existing team. And again, this goes back to you as a graduate, making sure you're finding a role that's suitable for you, not working for an organisation in the role that you don't want to be in. So these are the types of questions you would ask an employer when you start, how they would address certain issues. So you're the only person in that particular team. How is that going to affect your membership in other teams and things like that? So some of those are questions that you would have with an employer, but in addition, it's also about having the right skill set for the right job and for you being in the right job, in the right role. Any more, Laura?
Yeah, someone's just said, should I still apply for an internship even if I don't meet 1 or 2 of the essential criteria? And I think what we want to get across, we wouldn't want you to feel put off if there is a job that you see that actually you really like the look of, and actually you do think there are a lot of elements of that job that you can do. So perhaps if you think there are 1 or 2 elements of the essential criteria that perhaps you might not have as strongly, we would still encourage you to apply and perhaps maybe think more openly, think outside the box. Are there any examples that you could maybe draw upon for that? But also put emphasis on the other parts of the application and the other criteria that you do meet as well. So by all means, we do want the applications to be as tailored and as detailed as possible, but we wouldn't want to put anyone off if there's a role that they really like the look of. If there is a role that you really like the look of and you want to apply to, we would want you to apply, but we want you to ensure that you've made you put yourself in the best chance of success as possible. So even if you perhaps don't think that you meet 1 or 2 of the essential criteria, I wouldn't let that be a barrier to you applying.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll just try and address a few more questions now before we actually bring it to a close. Somebody's just asked and just said, I'm worried about joining a job which is social media digital based, but there being no specific team there to learn from. Will I expect it to know everything? If you go back to Stephanie's quote earlier on from Nightingale, one of the things she said was, I wasn't expected to learn everything and they listened to my ideas. Predominantly, we work with micro organisations and SME organisations who are relatively small businesses who are still growing or still developing. So, and this is why they really enjoy taking on graduates into their roles, because the graduates are coming out from university, they've got all these new ideas and they've got all these new strategies that they can implement for the business. Particularly if you're, a smaller SME where there's only 30 or 40 of you, they really value new ideas and new ways of thinking as well. And I guess the answer to that is you as a graduate and you and them as a company really grow and develop together, which is really what Stephanie's quote was all about. Okay, any more to address, Laura? Or?
Someone said, I have an ordinary degree, will I be able to apply for this scheme? So yes, this scheme is open to any applicants that have got an undergraduate degree, regardless of what your degree background is in. We ask you to look at the job carefully, see if there's anything specifically they're looking for, but as long as you have basically an undergraduate degree, you are more than welcome to apply. Someone has asked, where can I find the link to the list of jobs? So just after we close the Q&A, I'll take you onto the next page, which will actually have a link to our website. And the website there will actually show you there's a specific jobs page where we list all of our latest roles and opportunities. We've actually had one student asking about the guidelines provided by HMRC for international students post-summer 2021. Would employers reject us on the basis of having to sponsor us after 2 years of PSW? How will this affect us applying for the scheme? Now, this is perhaps something that we need to seek a bit more clarity on, as we are all following the HMRC guidelines. I know currently we're only able to take on graduates that have the right to work in the UK after graduation. And if an employer is looking for someone initially for 6 months, then perhaps that 2 years afterwards may not apply. But bear with us, this isn't something we've got 100% clarity on, as a lot of these guidelines are quite new. So it might be that perhaps we have to get a confirmed answer when we might put an announcement on our website. And then just the last two questions is, would there be more graduate software developer jobs on the scheme? Hopefully there would be. This is a job that we've advertised quite a lot. We've advertised quite a lot of software developers and software engineers. They tend to be quite popular with employers in the region. And again, as we stress, we would advise you to keep checking on the website and to get those email alerts, and we would let you know when those roles become available. And then another question we've had is, how much contact do you have with graduates once they've got an internship with you? Which is a brilliant question. So obviously we carry out the ILM qualification, so we interact with graduates through that. We also regularly check in with the graduates at the start of their internship and towards the end of their internship to see how things are going, and we regularly check in just to see how things are. So for instance, when COVID-19 happened, obviously that affected everyone, and a lot of our graduates, they had to adjust to perhaps working from home or working in very different environments. So we did regularly check in with all of them just to see how they were getting on, how they were managing, and how their employer was managing the situation. So even though you are essentially employed by that organisation, we do still keep in touch, and we are there if there were any issues that you needed to raise over the course of your employment.
Okay, so it's just on 11:30. I think we'll bring this webinar to a close now. Thank you ever so much for taking part and for submitting all those questions. Hope you found it really useful and enjoyable. Remember, we currently have 3 vacancies on our website, so have a look and see if you fit the skill requirements and these are roles that you would like to be part of. Also remember, your universities, whether they're the 4 key partners in South Wales or the national universities, will have their own career teams and colleagues to help you. If we haven't answered any of your questions, or you want to ask us some more specific questions, please email us, and there's our contact details. There's also the details for our website and our LinkedIn details. And of course, you can set up a job alert on LinkedIn. But as I said earlier on, keep checking the website, because roles will come up on a weekly basis, and particularly once we've done this our marketing campaign, we're hoping that more companies will come back to us and more roles will be available. And just a final question here: will we have to go into work, or due to the worries about COVID, can we work remotely? Good question. Again, that's a conversation between you and the employer, and all our employers are obviously adhering to the relevant policies and guidelines. And initially we're believing that induction is all working on remotely, and then that's something that you would pick up to an employer. But thank you ever so much, everybody, for taking part, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And please get in touch with us if you'd like any more clarity or if you'd like to answer any more questions.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.